Do I need to start the meeting, or is that Connie?
Why don't we go ahead and have, I don't think we have to do a roll call since it's just a
Me.
subcommittee meeting. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
You're on, Chair.
Okay, I call the Budget Committee meeting to order.
Okay.
And I guess what we need to go through and approve the agenda, but there's only literally two things on the agenda. Review the current biennium budget projections, and then the 2025 biennium budget development. Are there any additions?
No additions. Looks
Okay.
good as is.
Okay, so let's go for it.
All right. So one of the comments during the director's review was that there was more interest in getting more details on the budget. So I am prepared to do that right now, and I'm going to share my screen. And just as a heads up, I'm a little under the weather right now, coming back from my trip, so bear with me here. Hopefully all of you can see that. You should be looking at a Oregon Racing Commission legislative adopted budget 2023-2025. Does everybody see that? Okay, great. And I'm not going to take you through the whole 150 such pages. I'm just going to take you through a few highlight pages, just to give you an idea of what our budget was and some of the areas on where we are throughout that budget. So our overall budget was legislatively approved for 700 or 7,523 for 2021-23, and 2023-25 the limit was 8,014,000. We had adjustments in there, and these adjustments came out of services and supplies and special payments, and that reduced us down by 700,000. The reason for these reductions in special payments and services and supplies was because of the concerns that they had from the Flying Lark closing and one of our ADWs going away at that time, and the potential for future. So we were required to drop our budget by 700,000. Again, 600,000 of that came in from special payments.
Was part of the $100,000 reduction going remotely and not having an office, actual physical office?
We were able to absorb a lot of those in that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
That actually, we actually were able to absorb a little more than that. But this budget was put together before we were remote.
Mm. Okay.
But again, yeah, one of the things we were able to do by going remote is that shored up over 50,000 a year. Good questions. So staffing levels through this period has stayed consistent at 10.64. There's been no changes there. This is just some of the summaries of the adjustments. It's not really a lot of detail in here, except for you can see that other funds, we had a negative 2.8%, and that was from that $600,000.
Mm-hmm.
This tells you, you can see the special payments here were 3,400,000 for the 21-23, went down to 2,942. That's what was legislatively approved, as I've mentioned before. We knew that we could make other cuts. So we actually gave out more. We committed to more than this number by quite a bit. We'll get to that in a minute. Personal services, there's nothing we can do about that going up. There's cost of living increases every year. So there was very little that we could do about that. Services and supplies, they required us to bring that up. That's one of the reasons why we knew that we could do more in special payments, because we were going remote. We knew that there would be other items we could cut. And this just shows you a big level on more or less where all of our money goes. And again, this was the initial, this was 2021, 2023 at 34, 3.4, and you can see 2023, 2025, and you can see the drop there. And please, Chair, stop me anytime if you have any questions. I know you will. Now, one of the things that happened during the 2021, 2023 is they had to do an annual budget instead of a biannual budget, and that was because of the closing of Portland Meadows. So they had gone to emergency board to boost that up a bit. Again,
Okay.
that's historical information.
Connie, I do have a question.
Yes,
The stuff on the screen is a summary of the 2023-25 biennium. So it's the new biennium starts at the end of 25 and goes to 27.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
This is to give us a recap of where we are right now.
Okay.
And this is just continuing on current service levels. Here's the adjustments again. A lot of this is kind of the same thing over in different formats. And you can see the change in legislative budgets, all funds and other funds. And then you can see year over year. So we've continued to go up. 2019, 5.8, 2021, 7.3, 21, 23, 7.5, 23, 25 should have been 8.73, but then they dropped it down to 7.26. And as you all know, this was our revenue projections. So take that as you all know back. Again, I apologize. I'm a little under the weather today. Business licenses and fees went down, and that's partly because of the ADWs and partly because of losing Portland Meadows. We went from 2.18 to 1.851. Charges for services outs. This was an over projection. We projected 260,000 for this biennium. That was probably a little large. It's come in quite a bit less than that. Fines and forfeitures is we're on track. Oopsie. Then other funds. This is a hub fund money, 4.972. We actually brought it down to 4.712. And then, of course, 25% goes to the general fund. And other revenue, we did not add in other revenue. And we actually did have other revenue, so that's a plus on this end. This plus kind of made up for a good portion of this decline. This is, so you can see the difference between 2021 to 23 to the current one. And again, this is pretty much the same thing in a slightly different format. You can see fines and forfeitures. Actually, we projected to go down here. And the reason for that is because if you have less race days, you're going to have less fines. Same thing for business licenses and fees. We're going to have less individual licenses, plus we had lost an ADW. Now, remember, at the beginning of this, our cycle, as you know, Chair, our cycle starts a year before the fiscal year even starts. So this this process started before we even had an interim director, when our old director was here. So a lot has changed since this time when it was projected. And a lot of what we know has shored up since then. Board member stipends. We weren't even giving we were giving board member stipends before, but the board member stipends were only $30 a day. And that's changed by statute. Again, some of these things we don't know when it's going to change. That is one that's changed. We've had additions on family and medical leave insurance that's come up based on statutory changes by the state. We usually have some vacancy savings. Part of that is because we use contractors during the summer. And then this just talks about some of our expenses. In-state travel, obviously we're going to have a lot of in-state travel because we have all the fair meets. We have a lot of service charges for other agencies that support us. So a lot of people aren't aware of this, but if we have a legal question, the other agency is charging us for that, just like our accounting. Every department that helps us with anything we do, there's a bill associated with it. The Attorney General, for example, during this period of time, we were in the middle of a large lawsuit based on a former employee that finally was dropped, but that lasted 10 years. So that really increased our Attorney General fees. You can see a lot of these are very, very reduced too, though, like very nominal, like dues and subscriptions are very low. And again, this is the old budget, so a lot of the savings that we now have were not in here. We were expecting like this 100,000 right here, that was in the budget, but half the year we haven't had to pay that because we've come out of the building. Let's see. And again, this is just the totals. One of the concerns that our finance people have had is our beginning balance. In the 2021, 2023, a lot of our beginning balance was given to the associations because we didn't think that we needed to have that much of a beginning balance, and we convinced our CFO of that. And finally, we were able to hand over some of that money at the end of 2021, 2023. Unfortunately, we got a new CFO, and she's going back to what we always did before, which is keeping a much higher ending balance. So that's hurt us a bit. And a lot of this is just the transfers back and forth, how it goes from one account to the other. And again, you can see that there was no board stipend before. So that was an increase we had. $12,000 in the big picture isn't really that big. But this is something that's constantly going up, is a mass transit tax. And part of that is we are associated with Portland, even though we're technically not in Portland anymore. That's something I've been trying to work on getting them to stop, since we have no residents who are literally in Portland. nor do we have an office in Portland. Okay. And I mean, right here, you can see the total Attorney General budget. When you go for the whole year, how high it is. Professional services. State travel. And most of these are just repeats. So here's where you can see where the ending balance dropped way down, this 530,000. And that's why we had to really shore it back up here. And that's where that $600,000 from the special payments came out. So basically, this CFO is making us undo what this CFO had done the biennium before. Also, you can see in this one, we went from 10.64 to 10.89 and then back down to 10.64. This is because we were given another position because our reporting requirements went way up on Greyhound. We have probably 15 hours a week. We have somebody who's pulling Greyhound data from all over the world based on races, and this was a Gomberg request. And because of the amount of hours, he approved a position to do that, a partial position. That was before we lost the Flying Lark. Once we lost the Flying Lark, the person who we had that was going to do most of those auditing duties had free time. So we were able to eliminate that position back down. And instead of her doing those duties at the Flying Lark, she's now able to spend all that time doing the Greyhound data. When Greyhound goes away, that will eventually go away as well, the amount of work. This is more of the same. I have too many slides in here, apparently. Oh, we're at 38. We're almost done. I'll be glad to know. Professional services, IT professional services. One of the things that we've done that's really been helpful for us is the IT professional services. If we were using the state to do this, we'd be paying about 10 times more than what we're paying. But because we contract outside with a group called Cascade Technologies, they don't do a lot for us, but they save us a tremendous amount of money. The same thing with our HR support. Our HR support is done by a different agency who had some extra manpower. And from DAS doing it to having this other agency doing it, it's about 1/10 of the cost. So we've found some tremendous cost savings there as well. Okay, you'll notice that we have a lot of authorized positions. We don't have that many staff. It's because of the contractors that we pull in instead. So they're authorized and we want to keep them on the books, but we don't actually have them filled. And then a lot of these are part-time. So when you actually look at the full-time equivalent, it comes to 10.64. Okay. So that's a real high level on where we are through this first 2-year period. I'll be talking more about where we are going forward during the main meeting, but I wanted to make sure we were caught up on that. We do feel like we're making significant strides, partially because of some of the work that we've done on cost cutting, but also we've been very fortunate that our ADWs have, they're basically eating each other. So, excuse me. Sorry. So Churchill Downs, for example, because of their acquisition of uh, a new, it's not an acquisition, because of a new affiliate, we have which is DraftKings, but it's just a horse racing, and they have really helped us a lot in the last year um, keep up with where we're going. Unfortunately, because of some of the industry work, we've also lost Premier Turf, as I think everybody knows, as well as Gameplay Network. Overall, even with all the, I'm sorry, not Gameplay Network. Thank you, Micah.
US Opera.
US Off Track. Despite all the things that have occurred, we're actually doing pretty well right now. We are in a position where we believe that we're going to have some additional funds at the end of the year that we can give out. One of the most important things is going to be how much do we give out and how much should we give out. We want to have a strong ending balance. We're being told that we have to have a strong ending balance, although there are some concerns. The governor's office is looking for a lot of extra money for homeless issues. I mean, a lot. We have a number we can't give out. It's still confidential on how much they're trying to get from all the agencies. And that would support those services. Our concern is if we have too high of a balance, they may be tempted to sweep some of our cash. So we're going to have to make that difficult decision on, do we trust the government? Or do we give some of that out where it really needs to be in the hands of the horsemen? We don't want to be in a position where we have to shore up an extra $600,000-$700,000 the next time around either, though. So we'll be paying very close attention to that. I don't want to give anybody a number now, but we have a pretty good idea of what we think we can and should do. With that said, we do have legislative guidelines on how much we can give out altogether without going back to an e-board.
And Connie, I think it's a good thing to keep that down because they did sweep budgets probably in about 2003 and 2008. And they took money away that actually was not expected. So it's good to be on the prudent side.
And that's exactly what we're thinking. We don't want to make any promises to anybody. We don't want everybody to start spending this money before we have it. But we do think that there will be that's the right thing to do. So we'll talk more about that when we get closer. We do have limitations though. And because of that $600,000 they knocked out, our limitations are a lot less than we would like to see them. And I don't know that we'll have the option of being able to go back to an e-board and get more when our ending balance won't be as high as what they're telling us. I mean, right now they're asking for a 7-month ending balance, which is just crazy. There's no way in the world we're going to do a 7-month ending balance, especially with it being special payments. So we do expect that there will be a cushion out there that we can work with. And there will be some tough conversations. We're getting to the point where it's close to starting to submit the paperwork for the associations and the fair meets. One of the things we need to shore up is in the past, we were putting some of the fair meets in the following fiscal year because they fell partly into the following fiscal year. But we were paying them in the previous fiscal year. So we need to shore that up so we have it correct. So for example, when we do our next request for allocations from Rod Lowe for Southern Oregon and for Crooked River, we're going to have them do for 3 years instead of 2. And the reason is because that one will happen technically during this biennium. And then we want to make sure we have the other two bienniums budgeted out. So that's going to come off the top before anything else. And that's going to help us out with this. But then there's still going to be some additional money that'll be left over in addition to that. So that's a look at where we are now. Any questions on that? And again, even though we said $600,000 cut, we only did about a $200,000 cut because we found the extra money to give to them anyway. So the good news is we run pretty lean overall.
Okay. Any questions?
All right.
Okay, I don't see any.
Then
No,
I'd like to talk a little bit about the next biennium.
Yep. That's the
We,
second on the agenda. Right.
all right. I guess I should have waited for you to ask me to talk about it. I'm gonna blame it on my jet lag.
I don't blame you. Took me 2 days to get back from Spain, and there was only a 9-hour difference. So
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yep.
I thought it was bad going to Sri Lanka. This was the longest flight I've ever done. We had to take 4 planes. It was quite
Oh.
the thing. It wasn't we had a great time. It's just more to have a cold than anything else.
yeah.
Um,
Okay, so 2025-27 budget development.
update. All right. So we had submitted our budget for 2025, 2027. And we put some proposed cuts in there to address their concerns. And some of them they didn't like. For example, I told them I was willing to cut my position down to 3/4, and they said, you can't do that. And I said, well, I'm not going to start cutting other people if you're not going to let me cut myself. So we've been doing a lot of back and forth on different things, and we've been pretty good at sticking at our ground on what we're willing and not willing to do. So we believe what I don't know is that they've decided by now probably on if the governor's office is still going to support our 25%. But I haven't had a chance to talk to our CFO to find out. It was looking extremely positive, despite the fact that they're looking for all this extra money. So if we get that, the approval for that 25% to retain that, I think that's a huge win.
Yeah.
And again, it's confidential. Even if I knew, I couldn't tell you. But I think that I think the governor's office is looking at us very favorably right now.
Connie, when you have questions and who do you submit this to is there an agency? Because you said that you put in some cuts as directed by, and is it the governor's office or is there another
Right.
agency
So
you're working with?
in the past, we would do our budget and then, and this is one thing I really like about the governor's, the way that she does things compared to previous. And again, I wasn't the director in previous, but I remember what it was like. In previous, we would do our budget based on, what they tell us we have to have. You need to have this much increase in this category and this much increase in the other category. And basically, we do our projections and that's it. Well, this time, we were very collaborative with our, basically, she's our CFO, but she's literally a budget analyst. She works under the state CFO.
Mhm.
And we've spent a lot of time going back and forth with her. And she's been going back and forth with her CFO. And we've been all meeting with the governor's office. So we've had a lot of collaboration on what's going to happen next. And because of that, I think we're going to be in a much better position than we would be otherwise. So basically, it's a triangle. You've got the governor's office on what they want. You've got the finance department on what they want. And then what we want. We actually were surprised that the governor's office wanted to give us more than what the finance office wanted to give us. So the good news is we have some good support there. I think that's really the good news. The question is, where did they come up in the last 3 weeks and where will we end up? We don't know yet. And I don't want to make any assumptions until we do. And even if they say, every one of your bills is great, you can go forward, we don't know what the legislators will actually vote. I can tell you I had a meeting with one legislator recently who was not an advocate of the ORC and was extremely harsh to us and was ready to close our agency down 2 years ago or a year and a half ago when I had one of my first meetings. And he said, no matter what, he was going to support us and didn't want to see anything that would impact anybody's jobs. So we have made a lot of progress. I'm not going to say who that is because he wasn't on public record, but I do think we're doing some really good work and making some progress. We still have our 7 bills that are out there, and they've been approved by the governor's office, and everyone else is good with them right now. I think I made it clear that the governor's office did not want the 5 years for the that was initially what we had all agreed on, is all the different various parties that we would be fine with 5 years to phase out Greyhound. The governor's office did not want it to come out of her office that way. So if that goes through as written, it would end Greyhound racing in 2026, January 1, 2026. I don't know if the lobbyists will get that changed to still be 5 years or if it's going to be 2026, but we can only assume that we need to be prepared for it being 2026.
Do you know when those bills are going to be coming out? Because I know that they're still in development stages. They don't have numbers yet.
Yeah, we actually do know what the numbers are going to be.
Oh, yeah.
But I believe they get dropped. And Karen, you can correct me on this. Is it the end of December after the governor's budget comes out? 1st of January.
It's just going to be in that time frame.
Yeah.
I think all the recent developments with election, everything is, I think they're scrambling to see where federal funds are coming, and all of it is in flux. So, but it's all happening and it's all moving forward.
Yeah, and we've been one thing I'd like to thank Micah for is staying very closely in touch with the tribes and letting them know what we can tell them. Of course, they're still considered confidential until they come out. And the tribes have been very supportive of how transparent we've been with them and how we've been keeping them in the loop. And we have made a commitment that the second that, the bills are official, we're going to send them to all the tribes to continue that communication. Our biggest goals, I think it should be to nobody's surprise, is that, we want safety for our equine and humans, that we want the economic development for our rural communities in particular, and we want what's best to keep horse racing going. And if we just focus on those 3 goals, I think we're going to be in good shape.
Okay.
I'm going to buy a lottery ticket too.
It is. The lottery's up. He's got a big amount right now, so good idea. Okay. Anything else? We're just kind of waiting on whether bills are going to be dropped and what the governor's budget amounts will be at the end of December. And it's always a work in progress as to what the agency budgets will end up being.
Yeah, we'll know a lot more. As soon as those drop, and we will be able to give you a much more robust report in January. We'll have another. I recommend, of course, it's your choice, that we have a budget meeting again in January, as well as then I can give a much more open analysis of where we are.
Okay.
We're gonna have to, it's gonna be touchy on these, I'm gonna call them grant applications as opposed to hub money, because they're really grant money is what they are. We're gonna have to do the grant money on, what our budget is, not what the bills are gonna get passed. So there's a good chance that we'll have to, I mean, that's a good thing though, is that we get to go back and add money. Depending on what happens. We have there's just a lot in flux with the Greyhound bill and possibly, and the keeping money that's currently going to the state, and all these other the other bills really are not as impactful. It's just those two that are the most impactful.
Yeah, it was going to be challenging because transportation is going to be a huge issue. They've lost so much money because people now have hybrids and electric cars, and 100% of the gas tax was going to roads. So that has been diminished quite a bit.
Yeah,
A
that
lot
and the
of people
forest
realize-
fires.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that we were the first in the nation to have a gas tax that went almost 100% to roads, and it's still happening. But there's less people using gas.
Yep. Any questions? Otherwise, I'm done.
Okay. Looks good. Any questions? I think we'll just kind of wait and see what happens, at the end of December, and what the legislature's looking like when they actually meet in the 1st of February. So, okay. If that is it, no more questions. I will.
Public comment.
Yeah, that's on my second page. Is there any public comment?
So I just have a quick question, Connie, I guess. When are we looking at trying to do some of our putting in for our budgets? Like you said, the fairs like Southern Oregon and Crooked River, we're gonna do a 3-year I guess you can't really call it a biennium, I guess, if it's 3 years.
Actually, you're doing an annual and a biennial, because
Okay.
you're doing the last half of this year. I think what we had decided is, well, and that's something we can add on. That's a good question, is I think I'd like to have those in no later than the end of December, but preferably earlier. The problem is for the fair meets, I think what we need to do with the fair meets is we really need to kind of go along the same lines as we did last year, not increase anything at this point. Try to stay as much as we can within what we did last year, so we can kind of project out for the associations. There may be some exceptions to that, but that's
So
something
you're-
we can talk about more. And I wish we were having a fair meeting this month, but it didn't look like Doug wanted to do one till December.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I'm working on, I had a conversation with Doug this week, and I'm working on dates right now for our fair meet. And so when you talk about leaving it the same, one of the way the 25 dates fall this year was the 4th of July falls on a Friday. And talking with Doug, and looking at the schedule, Sora would like to add an extra day and run Friday and Saturday. And I talked to Doug about that because he starts the next Wednesday. And we felt like one extra day wouldn't cannibalize either one of the race meets. But that increases our budget if I run an extra day.
I think what I'm looking at is not having a more for any one category. I don't think that's gonna empty the bank completely, break the bank. So I think it should be okay. That's not to me though, that's up to the new finance committee, whoever those are, and the commissioners ultimately. But we lost days, on the commercial side. We did less days on the commercial side last year, so we should be okay, I think, with that.
Okay.
I just don't want to raise purses anymore, necessarily, until we know where we are.
Sure. But one more day of purses you think is okay?
I think so.
Okay,
We're doing pretty well. I mean, with the ADWs, unless something terrible happens, I can't foresee. I don't think that's gonna break if that's gonna break the bank, we're in trouble.
okay. All right, well. I'm
And
gonna-
again, we know we have some extra sitting out there,
Okay,
and that's gonna help fund that, so we should be fine.
okay,
And actually, what you're talking about would be for the next fiscal year anyway, so it should be no problem.
right. Okay,
Okay, any other questions? Okay, hearing none, Republic comment, I move for adjournment. And so with that, the meeting is formally adjourned. And thank you all for being on. Connie, do you want to stay on here?
Oh, wait,
and talk for tomorrow?
Micah, do you have something?